the responsibility of the state to ensure that the kids have the education that they need going forward. And I don't know the answer to that. It's a question I think that parents have to ask as well. You know, what do you want for your children? And I think that responsibility ultimately lies with them.
Thank you, George. April, your second question, and we'll stay with George.
I knew that. That's why I didn't sit back.
That's so you can't, the second guy can't always say, yeah, I agree with him. And no.
I'd like to, if I may, repeat the question that I presented to the Budget Committee earlier, that if the South School warrant does fail this year, what should happen next, especially since the school's not currently up to fire codes?
Yeah, it's a real simple answer. We'll do everything we can to make it pass next year. It's got to be done. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that that is the primary project that has to be done for this community. I mean, the town council recognizes it, the budget committee recognizes it, the school board recognizes it. So those are the 10, 12, 16 folks or 18 folks that the community's elected over the course of the last few years. And, you know, we all agree that that's got to be the primary focus in the capital plans.
John?
This year and the year before last, I taught an enrichment cluster in South School. We did radio. 1 year was in one of the modular classrooms. And it's a little bit disconcerting to be sitting in a classroom that feels like cardboard. I mean, okay, so it's not rare that a floor creaks under my weight, but I didn't like the way that this one was doing it, okay? Crowded with kids, crowded with jackets, crowded with everything. I think that anybody who has spent some time in the South School, particularly in the modulars, knows beyond any doubt that they need to be replaced and that they need to be replaced now. And just to climb up on a soapbox and hope it doesn't creak too much, I think that it's important to say that if the state were fulfilling its obligation to pay for an adequate education for every student in the state, we wouldn't be looking at this as such a contentious or potentially contentious issue, because the money that is currently coming from our tax rate, our property taxes, would be distributed. The state money would be offsetting more of the property taxes, so it wouldn't look like such a potentially Herculean sacrifice to vote in this $5 million bond. But it has to be done. And back to your question, if it's defeated at the polls in March, what do we do? Start campaigning for next March. There's no choice.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Trent, your last one, and stay with John.
School board members are responsible for a massive portion of the overall tax bill. Describe your approach to the budget process, and you can include contract negotiations in that.
Schools are an interesting entity. They have different groups of stakeholders. A stakeholder is somebody who has a stake in the organization. In the schools, it's easy to see that there are students, there are taxpayers, and there are employees, probably in that order in terms of priorities, in terms of whose interest you have to look at first. You're right that school is a labor-intensive business. Education is a labor-intensive business. You are right that when you're talking about a school budget, a huge amount of it goes to current employees. But when you look at the employees as individuals in a classroom instead of as a monolithic mass, you have to ask other questions like, what is the right ratio that I want for students to teachers in this grade level? What kind of what kind of benefit do support workers provide, teachers, aides provide? Do we have the right mix of senior and junior teachers? Because obviously a senior teacher costs more than a junior teacher does. These are all questions that I think a school board has to grapple with, and I think that the parents, the taxpayers, have to take a look at as well. I'm somebody who tends to think that we're pretty close to right now in terms of the ratio of students to teachers in the different grades. And I think that the parents of most of the students would tend to agree with that, if not push for even fewer students per grade in the class. So where do we go? Do we want to cut teachers? Do we want to have fewer teachers in the classroom? I don't think so. When we replace teachers, do we look at people with less experience, perhaps rolling in with lower salary requirements under the current contracts? Well, that's what we do anyway. That's what we're doing now. And again, climbing back on my soapbox here, this is a discussion that we should be having in light of getting the state to solve its obligation to education instead of finding ways to hide behind a constitutional amendment or ambiguous wording that is designed to liberate the state from solving the problem. These are problems that we have to solve on the local level, but the state should be helping us do it.
Thank you. George.
Thanks, Trent. I think looking at the budget, I go back to what I think my primary goal is as a member of the Londonderry School Board, and that's really to provide a superior education for all of our students. So from that, you can break it down to, you have different constituencies. You've got kids with special needs that need certain things. You've got kids who are not traditional learners that have special needs. We have kids who, for circumstances beyond their control, can't fit into the normal day of school. District's done a great job, an absolutely outstanding job of addressing those needs, and that attested in dropout rate, which is below 1% now, best in the state as far as I'm concerned. The fact that in the past 3 years we've graduated about 100 and probably pretty close to 170 kids from the adult ed program. These are kids who were on the verge of dropping out, and we've gotten them their diplomas. We've got, I think, about 16% of our population now is in the special needs category. We've brought many, many programs in-house. That's been a vast savings because we don't have to send our kids out. Not only monetary savings, but we keep our own kids in our community, and that's an important part. So those are the kind of things that I look at. I break the budget into, or rather the district, into really 3 areas. You've got curriculum, you've got the support for the curriculum, and then you've got the infrastructure support. The infrastructure support is the one place I think that for the past 3 years I've tried to focus on in looking at reducing the budget and trying to gain more efficiencies. And that infrastructure support is things like facilities, it's things like HR, it's things like IT, and those kind of things. It's no secret that I believe there are opportunities for the town and the school district to work together to address some of those issues. I don't believe we need 2 IT departments. I don't believe there has to be separate people taking care of facilities for this community.
One IT department and one consultant.
Well, I'm sorry, you're right. One IT department, one consulting company. I don't think that we need to do those kind of things. I think there's opportunities that we must look at. In fact, as I look to make my choices for town councilors, I'm looking for people who feel the same way as me, because I think that that is one of the areas that the community can excel and get money back into the pockets of the people